Greetings, everyone. Welcome. I want to talk about fire today. That's the theme. It's a theme for us collectively, and it's a theme for me today. And the reason why it's a theme for me today is because I had a wonderful conversation with the woman who painted the Fire Angel, which is the painting that you see behind me. It's done on silk. And it's really a beautiful piece. What you're seeing right now doesn't give it justice at all. Her name is Genoa Panther, and she does some really amazing work. I think she's probably about maybe in her 70s. She's really this amazing, beautiful woman, beautiful inside and out, and just this really wonderful energy. And she is just her work, and talking to her, you can see how much she radiates what she paints. And she's just really an amazing spirit. And I got to know her a little bit when I was at an event back in April, and I went to go look at her stuff at her booth, and I really wanted to take something home, but I just couldn't see how I'd be able to do that because her pieces are big, and her pieces, of course, have a lot of value to them in terms of, what you're going to pay for it. So anyway, she pulled this piece out when we were looking through the stuff, and she told me, she said, "Teresa, you need to take this home with you." And I was like, "Oh, that's really beautiful, Genoa." And she told me how much it was, and I just said, "That's really beautiful, thank you, and I will consider it." And I really did consider it, but I just knew that it was something that I just didn't feel comfortable spending that much money on the piece of art, even though I loved it, and I really believed her when she said, "This is an important piece, Teresa, and it needs to come home with you." So a couple days went past. The last day of the event, she comes over to my booth, and she says to me, "You just need to take that piece home." And she says, "Just take it." She says, "I want you to take it." She says, "Just give me a couple $100 for it." She ended up lowering the price overall of what I was to pay for it, and said, "Just pay me what you can. And if you get to a point where you feel that you can't pay me, it's okay. But I just really want you to take this home. You just need to have it." And I couldn't say no, not because I didn't want to hurt her feelings or anything. I couldn't say no because I knew over those course of those couple of days, a friend of mine that was with me at the event, her and I were talking about, like, okay, well, I paid this much for it because I think I could feel okay about doing that in terms of spending money. And the price that she came back to me with was the price that I said that I'd be willing to spend. So that's why I did it. And because it all just synchronistically lined up. And I knew I was supposed to take it home. So I did, and I have, and there it is hanging. And many times in my videos, you'll see it hanging behind me because I just love its beauty, and I feel the power of the Fire Angel. And I want to read to you a brief little part of a poem from Rumi that is at the bottom of this Fire Angel. And she shared that with me today when I spoke to her on the phone. And so I'm going to read it to you. And here's how it goes. "Set the temple of my body on fire. Burn the thorns and make me a bower of roses." I just love Rumi. I do. So I wanted to share that piece with you and just share the beauty of it. And for me, when it did come into my life, so many things began to change and continue to change. And I really saw that it had a deeper meaning than even what I even knew it to be. And the other crazy thing is that I even decided, with not even thinking about that Fire Angel, to color my hair. And it's like a really light rose gold. And when I came home and I was going to take a selfie, I stood in front of that, just kind of, this would be a good backdrop. And I realized, oh, wow, my hair color just kind of blends right in. So anyway, that was pretty cool. So the other part of the fire piece that I want to talk about is I want to talk about what fire represents. And as I said, it's part of the collective themes that are going on right now. So as we know, fire's hot, fire burns, fire can feel scary, fire is intense. And fire is also, it's transformative, it's radiant, it's energizing, it's impulsive, it's inspirational, it's enthusiasm, it's excitement, it's passion, it's what drives our passion purpose in our life, it's leadership, it's freedom of expression. And the other thing that fire is fierce. It's fierce. And these collective themes, one of them in particular that occurred actually in April 2018 is the archetype of the wounded healer went out of a water sign and into a fire sign. And so what comes up for me when I think about that is the fierceness of the warrior, because it is at a particular sign that is the archetype of the warrior, which is Aries. And many people think a warrior is someone who fights. And sure, that's true, that does occur. But a true warrior doesn't fight in the same way from the shadow place of itself. It fights from the light. And so when I think about the fierceness of fire, I think about what would it be like to have the fierceness of fire without the anger, without the rage, without the hate. Because I believe that's what the Chiron, the archetype of the wounded healer, is here to teach us, how to be fierce without the hate and the anger and the rage. And I will admit, and many of you I'm sure will agree with me, that fire is many times the impetus to bring that fierceness forward. But it's, and that anger is not a bad emotion. People think I feel angry, that's a bad thing to be feeling, and I don't believe that it is. Anger is another feeling that we have. It's an experience that we're having, but it's what we do with that anger, right? That determines whether we're expressing it in shadow or whether we're expressing it light. So I want to leave you with that little piece of the fire and the fierceness of fire, and how in some ways in which you have possibly been wounded, or we're watching the wounding that's going on in our collective right now. And how can we be with that fiercely, without anger, without rage, without acting from that place, but in a response to it. And then another collective theme that I want to touch on very quickly is the fire that we're experiencing in terms of expansion and visionary and leadership. And it's in the sign of Jupiter, which Jupiter, anything that Jupiter touches on, it just supersizes. And I love it. I love the energy of Jupiter because it brings some levity to things. It can lighten things up. It wants to expand things. It wants things to just, bring a different weight. And it brings, what does it bring? Let me think about this for a second. I don't want to repeat myself and say the same thing. And it brings a feeling of, how do we get ourselves from the place that we are right now into a bigger opening? And in that, bringing our light out, meaning what it is that we're here to share with others, our gifts, our skills, our, whatever it may be, our laughter, our joy, like how do we spread that around? That's the power of what Jupiter can bring. And the other thing that Jupiter can bring in its shadow is it can bring the hedonist. So it can be, supersize me and do it to the point where it can be very overwhelming. It can be toxic. It can be the addict. So there's both of these energies that are playing out for us. And so, like I said, with Chiron and the energy of the wounded healer, and the anger and the rage, like how are we directing that fire? How are we directing our fierceness? It's not about revenge. It's not about vengeance. Even though I know it's, we're definitely compelled sometimes to go that direction. But we all know that's not what it's about. So I just wanted to bring that up to just get you thinking about fire, and how maybe you experience that, or how you are experiencing it, because it's going to be around for the next year in terms of really looking at it a little more closely for each of us, and just give it some thought and let me know what you think. I'd love to have that conversation with you. All right. Namaste.